They say a mother's love is unconditional. It's the one safe harbor you're supposed to count on when the rest of the world turns its back on you. But what do you do when the person who gave you life is the very person trying to destroy it? My name is Maya, and until very recently, I believe my mother was my biggest supporter. My father passed away when I was just 10 years old, leaving a massive void in our lives. He was a successful builder, a man who worked himself to the bone to ensure his family would always be provided for. After he left us, it was just me and my mom against the world. Or so I thought. Growing up, my mom always managed our finances with a tight fist. She constantly reminded me of how expensive life was, how hard we had to save, and how we had to live modestly. I never questioned her. Why would I? She was my mother. When I wanted to apply for college, she gently guided me away from the prestigious universities I dreamed of, steering me toward cheap, local options. She told me we simply couldn't afford anything else, and that student loans would ruin my future. I accepted it, sacrificing my dreams because I loved her and wanted to protect our little family from financial ruin. But there was a beautiful secret waiting for me at the end of the tunnel, or at least that's what I believed. My father had set up a trust fund for me before he died. It was a substantial amount, meant to secure my housing, my higher education, and my future. The rule of the trust was simple but absolute. It was entirely locked away under a legal custodianship until the exact moment I turned 18. My mother was the temporary custodian, tasked with overseeing it, but she couldn't legally withdraw the core funds for herself. As my 18th birthday approached, the tension in our house began to shift. It was subtle at first. My mom started asking strange, probing questions about what I planned to do with the money. She kept dropping hints about how we should invest it together, or how she deserved a portion of it for raising me alone. I always laughed it off, promising her that I would take care of her once I graduated. But what I didn't know that day was that my mother wasn't planning on waiting for my generosity. She was already putting a dark, desperate plan into motion. With only days left until my birthday, the atmosphere in our home turned cold, heavy, and thick with secrets. I began to notice her speaking in hushed whispers on the phone late at night, hanging up the moment I walked into the room. A strange, sinking feeling took root in my chest, a quiet warning that the woman I trusted most in the world was hiding something that would alter my life forever. The realization hit me on the night before my 18th birthday. It was a rainy Tuesday, just hours away from my midnight milestone. My mom had gone out to dinner with her new boyfriend, a smooth-talking man named Richard who had suddenly appeared in her life a few months prior. I was looking for a spare charging cable in her home office when I noticed her laptop was left open on the desk. A series of open emails caught my eye, and before I could stop myself, I started reading. My heart completely shattered into a million pieces with every line I scanned. The emails were between my mother, Richard, and a corrupt financial advisor. They were finalizing a legal loophole. Because my mom was the custodian, she had the right to transfer the fund into a joint management account if she did so before the clock struck midnight on my birthday. Once the money was in that joint account, she and Richard could legally drain every single penny, leaving me with absolutely nothing. The documents were already drawn up, waiting for her final digital signature, which she planned to execute the moment she returned home from dinner. She had even written an email to Richard saying, "Once the money clears tomorrow morning, we can finally buy the coastal estate and leave this town behind. Maya will just have to figure it out." Reading those words, my world collapsed. The grief was suffocating. The woman who tucked me in at night, the woman who watched me cry over my father's death, was actively planning to rob me of my father's final gift and abandon me. I sat on the floor of her office, tears streaming down my face, feeling utterly broken and exposed to a cruel reality. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pack my bags and run away. But as the initial shock began to fade, a profound wave of anger replaced the sorrow. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed into an icy, burning strength. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:30 p.m. I had exactly 2.5 hours before my 18th birthday officially arrived, the moment where the trust fund legally became mine alone. If I did nothing, my mother would sign those papers at midnight, and my future would be stolen. I wiped my tears and forced my hands to stop shaking. I knew I couldn't confront her directly. She would only lie, panic, and speed up the process. I needed to fight back using the exact weapons she was using against me: secrecy and timing. I called the main emergency hotline for the bank that held my trust fund. I demanded to speak to an overnight legal representative, explaining that I was the sole beneficiary of the account and that fraudulent activity was about to take place. The minutes were ticking away like a heartbeat in my ears as I was transferred from manager to manager. By 11:15 p.m., I finally reached a senior compliance officer. My voice was calm, steady, and resolute. I presented all the account details my father had left me in his original paperwork, which I had safely hidden in my bedroom. I informed the bank that as of midnight, I was revoking any custodial access my mother had and requested an immediate, temporary emergency freeze on the account due to suspected unauthorized transfer attempts. The officer informed me that to finalize the freeze and permanently lock her out, I had to digitally submit my formal identity verification and a signed revocation form precisely at midnight, the exact minute I turned 18. At 11:45 p.m., I heard the front door open. My mother was back. She walked into the house, smiling, completely unaware that her dark secret had been exposed. "Happy early birthday, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with a warmth that now made my stomach turn. I forced a smile, pretending everything was fine, and told her I was going to bed. I sat in my dark room, staring at my tablet screen, watching the digital clock. 11:58, 11:59. The tension was unbearable. My mouse hovered over the submit button. The very second the clock turned to 12 a.m., making me officially 18, I clicked submit. The system processed it instantly. The trust fund was sealed, locked tightly under my sole control. Less than 10 minutes later, I heard a loud, frantic gasp from my mother's office down the hall. Then came the aggressive clicking of a mouse, followed by a slam door. She came bursting into my bedroom, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. "Maya, something is wrong with your dad's account. I need you to sign something for me right now," she demanded, her voice shaking. I looked up at her, no longer the naive little girl she thought she could manipulate. "It's over, Mom," I said quietly, showing her the email confirmation from the bank. I locked the account at midnight. I know everything. The silence that followed was deafening. The mask completely fell off her face, replaced by a mixture of shame and absolute defeat. She realized in that exact moment that her greed had cost her the one thing that truly mattered: her daughter. In the weeks that followed, I moved out and cut all ties with her and Richard. Without my money, their grand plans crumbled, and Richard left her shortly after. It was a painful ending, but it brought me a profound sense of peace. I learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty and love. By protecting my father's legacy, I finally found my own strength, ready to step into a bright future that belongs entirely to me.